All right. I have been on a somewhat of a South Park binge lately, so we will be watching That Time China Made South Park Illegal by Blooms. So let's check it out.
Hate fun of any kind, since the dean informed me of the hundreds of complaints she received about my intro from the previous lecture, which is fine. God forbid I try to make learning a bit more fun for my
Oh, the link will be in the description below.
students. So from now on, no more crazy edits or music. Instead, we're keeping it simple. Roll the intro. So as all of you are well aware of by now, South Park isn't exactly a show that strays away from controversy. They kinda embrace it. At this point, I've lectured about every major controversy they've experienced and gone into depth on the
Well, I probably should see this video too. Leave, if you want me to see every South Park controversy explained by Bloom, give this video to 17 likes and I shall take a look at it.
times they almost started a war, said a slur 42 times in one episode, and took down Scientology. And while at its peak, South Park was causing controversy left and right, following the whole almost starting a war thing back in 2010, they wouldn't have another major controversy for nearly a decade. So today, we're going to be talking about their return to form, so to speak. The controversy that would remind everyone why the show became so notorious in the first place. In 2019, they'd take aim at quite possibly their
Oh yeah, when you went to China.
most terrifying target yet. A literal international powerhouse, a force powerful enough to censor and control the media of nearly 1.5 billion people with an iron grip. A force that has the literal most powerful organizations in the entire world eating out of the palm of their hand. A force that exploits the greed of these corporations to push propaganda to their people and the rest of the world so effectively that it's only a matter of time before all of our media is dictated by what they deem to be okay. Today, we're talking about China. China, the most beautiful country in the world.
China. I know China very well.
Known for their strong stance against censorship and dedication to preserving their citizens' freedom of speech. Except don't talk about that. Or that. Or that. Definitely not that. Or that. And of course, who could forget about Tiananmen Square, where on June 4th, 1989, absolutely nothing of interest happened at all. So with the Olympics wrapping up and the US tying with China for gold medals, as well as the release of Black Myth Wukong and it absolutely shattering records thanks to being one of the few games that was also released in China, I figured what better time to talk about this situation. Now, if you don't know about this situation,
let's see, he's a Broncos fan, which I'm not a Broncos fan. I'm an Eagle fan. Go Birds. Let's see, Nemesis, I never played, I don't know what that is. Don't know what that is. I don't know how to do a Chinese accent, so I don't know how to do that.
You're probably thinking, well, if China is so powerful, surely a cartoon making fun of them is beneath them. It wouldn't even be worth their time to acknowledge their existence. Well, chances are you've at least heard about this. It was a considerably large news story
I'd work on your chart
at the time, and I've discussed it in previous lectures, but to say that China was upset by this episode would be a pretty massive understatement. As it turns out, China wasn't too fond of it, and immediately following its release, South Park would be banned in China, as they completely wiped any trace of South Park from all of the Chinese internet. It was essentially as if the show never existed. Literally overnight, any content related to South Park, whether that be forums, fan websites, clips, or even full episodes, completely vanished. So if you were a Chinese fan of South Park, it was now impossible to access any information about it through the state-sanctioned internet. Now, I will admit that I exaggerated a little bit in the title. The show's not technically illegal as far as I know, but it's definitely banned, and I'd be willing to bet that Chinese fans aren't exactly outspoken about their love for the show. The release of this episode would not only block
work on your stuff, ese. Oh, that's wrong accent. Let's see, that's a lot of money. China, India, United States.
Nearly 1.5 billion people from accessing any South Park content, but it would also lead to widespread media coverage, an apology from Matt Stone and Trey Parker, a celebrity reportedly being permanently banned from the country for liking a South Park tweet, and the episode even being used as a form of public protest by the people actively fighting against China's regime. This would turn out to be one of South Park's most bizarre controversies, and through my research, I discovered that this rabbit hole goes pretty deep. So at this point, you may be asking, what exactly could South Park have said in this episode that would warrant this reaction from one of the world's largest countries? Well, With the intro out of the way, and the knowledge that my social credit score will never recover from this, let's get into it. This is that time China made South Park illegal. Now, if you're like me, your first thought was probably, wait, South Park aired for 23 years and wasn't already banned in China? I mean, it's not like the show's been very kind to them in the past. After the 2008 Olympics, Cartman was convinced that China was going to invade America and took an...
Oh, yeah, I remember that episode. Konnichiwa, everybody. I'm here for you. I don't remember.
An entire P.F. Chang's hostage while dressed like this. There's also a prominent side character whose entire point is to be literally every Chinese stereotype in the book. And who could forget that time when they took on China in the World Championships of Dodgeball, which gave us one of the most iconic jokes from the whole show.
Hey, you want to hear my impersonation of American?
Hey, I really want that. That looks good.
Hey, let me try.
I'll use my credit card. Do you have any non-dairy creamer?
And also, most people don't know this, but in the early seasons of South Park, Matt and Trey used to make these live-action intros for the VHS releases of the show that were always very funny. And in the intro for the Dodgeball episode, they discussed their recent trip to China where they did some fun sightseeing.
Trey and I got the idea for this episode when we visited Beijing, China together.
That's right. We saw the Great Wall, the Forbidden City, and even Tiananmen Square, where Chinese students were killed by soldiers. Here we are reenacting the Tiananmen Square massacre.
After we got out of jail for reenacting the Tiananmen Square massacre, we went back home and thought, wow,
Nobody cares.
China is really stupid. Let's make fun of it. So we did.
A bit surprising to say the least. So before we talk about what the episode did to get the show banned, it's important that we understand how censorship in China works, particularly with Western media trying to break into the Chinese market. I wanted to give a quick shout out to BritMonkey, who has an incredible video going into depth about a lot of the things that are banned in China and how their censorship works. It provided me with a lot of information I'm going to share here, so go check out that video if you're interested in a more in-depth look. The internet in China is heavily monitored and regulated. The vast majority of Western websites and social media are blocked on their internet. This massive list of censored websites and topics is humorously referred to as the Great Firewall. So instead, China creates their own versions of these websites. Basically, China has their own internet entirely, their own YouTube, Amazon, Twitter, basically any site you'd want to access on the internet, and all of these Chinese
Holy crap, I did not know that.
websites are regulated by the state.
What's how, Michael? I told you, be careful, huh? You have big eyes, small face. I like it. What's your WeChat?
This allows all of the traffic on these sites to be monitored and censored by the government, the Chinese Communist Party, and discourages citizens from looking for alternatives. Oh, you want to use Twitter? Why would you want to do that? We literally have Twitter at home, and there's none of those icky Westerners on there. China #1, long live Xi Jinping. This means that if they don't want people talking about something, they have the ability to block or censor anything they want. Let's say I wanted to talk about the LGBT, or the educational training centers that are totally not concentration camps, or the place where absolutely nothing of interest happened at all. Anything I would try to post about these topics would be censored or blocked, and if something somehow did make it out, it wouldn't be there for very long. And if they suddenly decide something needs to be censored, they can just go back and get rid of anything that already existed too, because, like I said, pretty much everything that Chinese citizens can
I wonder if Jackie Chan's seen this episode. He's Chinese. I wonder if he will like this episode.
access is controlled by the state. They make it as hard as possible to access anything that might change the way their citizens think. Their goal is to ensure that their people are only exposed to the ideologies and beliefs of the CCP, and in doing so create a state that finds power in its unity. It's mass manipulation and censorship of public opinion on a massive scale. It's basically 1984, which ironically isn't even banned in China. And worst of all, it's incredibly blatant. At least when our government controls public opinion through manipulation and censorship, they do it a little more subtly and give us the illusion of free will. But of course, Chinese citizens have found ways to circumvent these tactics, mostly by using VPNs. Which reminds me of today's No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. VPNs are widely used and allow users to break through this great firewall and access the rest of the internet, kind of like modern-day Mongolians.
Hey, fuck you, Mongolian! Don't you break down my wall!
It's estimated that around 30% of users in China use VPNs, which means that for about 700 million Chinese people, their only access to the internet is regulated by the state. This heavy regulation also applies to any Western media that isn't banned in China. You see, when a massive corporation sees the potential to break into a new market, they tend to do whatever it takes to do that, especially when that market has 1.5 billion potential customers, which is why many American corporations are more than willing to censor or change their media to comply with Chinese censors. Hollywood, in particular, has become notorious for their willingness to cut out and change parts of movies that the CCP doesn't like so that they can be released in China. Things like Chinese characters being killed, gay characters, mentions of Taiwan, Chinese Taipei. And really, they just censor anything that doesn't outright paint China in the best light possible. For example, in the Chinese version of World War Z, they had to cut out a scene of characters discussing how the zombie virus might have originated in China. Not even that it did come from China, just that it might have. Basically, every major media corporation does this in some way, with companies like Disney being the biggest culprits. And it's not just limited to movies. The NBA has major stake in China and went out of their way to get back in their good graces after one of their employees said something the CCP didn't like. We'll talk more about this later in the video. This censorship is also common in the video game market, with countless games releasing special versions of their games that are only available in China to prevent the population from interacting with the outside world, as well as often changing different aspects of the game to comply with the censors. Basically, what it boils down to is China has very deep pockets, and despite the fact that corporations are usually known for their ethical business practices, the incredible potential of tapping into the Chinese market is just too much to refuse, even if it means sacrificing their creative integrity and supporting the ideology of a communist state that is actively working to dismantle the Western world. And not to mention
the Western world, here we go again.
Funding a state that's totally not committing a genocide, which is so crazy because obviously today the Western world would never fund a state that's openly committing a genocide. You know, I think we could all agree that these corporations could use some integrity. And in 2019, the two creators of a cartoon thought the exact same thing. They felt inspired to make a statement to show these corporations what it really meant to have some integrity. And in doing this, they would seal their fates to forever be cursed with a low social credit score.
You could use some integrity, China.
On October 2nd of 2019, the second episode of the 23rd season of South Park would be released, titled Banned in China. And no, my spelling of banned in my every South Park controversy video was not a typo, that's actually how it's spelt. It's a pun related to the side plot of the episode.
I'd see 100%. I don't know what that says. Hey, look, there's Butters and Jimmy and forgot his name, Timmy. No, wait, there's Jimmy and I don't know this guy's name. Where's Cartman? Who cares?
The episode, okay? The episode opens with Stan writing some music for his new band when Randy busts in with his incredible idea. You see, this episode takes place in the midst of Randy's notorious Tegrity Farms arc when all he cared about was selling weed and finding ways to make insane amounts of money doing so. His idea is ingenious and it's shocking that no one has ever thought of it before.
We could grow the family business by selling Tegrity to the Chinese.
He just found out that there's actually a lot of people in China and he wants to tap into that market. This would mean missing Stan's concert with his new band, and because he's a genius businessman, he sees another opportunity to increase his sales by
Hey, look, I barely noticed this. That's crazy.
Forcing Stan to wear a Tegrity shirt while he's not there to promote it.
Then again, I guess family doesn't mean all that much to you.
At the Autumn Fest, Stan performs the song he wrote about living on a farm with his new band, Crimson Dawn. It's honestly such a toe tapper.
And a 1, and a 2, and a...
And of course they make Jimmy the drummer.
Heck yeah, that's freaking awesome.
The only instrument that requires functioning legs to play, especially at this tempo. Surely he'd need a double kick pedal to be ripping it as hard as he is, but I'm not going to question it. Also, fun fact, the song is called Useless Sacrifice, and it's by a real metal band called Death Decline. Later in the episode, they also use the song Second Skin by Dying Fetus. On his way to China, Randy quickly realizes that everyone going to China works for companies trying to break into the market, and of course he's upset because everyone stole his totally original idea.
Oh, for Christ's sake! You have a good idea and everyone wants to copy you.
He even sees some recognizable faces. Back at the farm, the band is rehearsing their new song when a producer interrupts to offer a proposal to the
I'm just an average white guy, looking for some children to do naughty things to. So, hey kids, you want to make some money? I'm just an average white guy. My name is Carlos, by the way. Ignore what I just said.
band.
What we need to focus on is your biopic.
Also, side note, I love this gag that they do with the producer snapping along to the music like it's a pop tune. It reminded me of the people clapping along to Thad's acoustic Guitar Hero playing in Guitar Queero.
Oh, I love this song.
Glad for the mentally retarded man.
They decide to take his offer, and they end up brainstorming ideas for their new biopic. They begin by discussing how their band was formed, and they immediately get a taste of what it entails to make a lot of money in Hollywood.
Oh, and then Kenny learned to play bass watching YouTube videos of John Lennon with the Dalai Lama.
Talking about the Dalai Lama doesn't go over well with the Chinese.
The what?
Oh, that's right. China definitely wouldn't allow any mention of the Dalai Lama because he's kind of the symbol of resistance to the Chinese occupation in Tibet. Southwest China. Okay, well...
I did not know that. Thank you, Bloom, for telling me that.
Well, how about some of their childhood interests? That would make for a good story.
Well, I always liked Winnie the Pooh.
You can't do that because Winnie the Pooh looks just like the president of China.
Okay, no. Winnie the Pooh is illegal in China because some Chinese students said he looked like the Chinese president.
So this isn't technically true. Winnie the Pooh itself isn't banned in China. There's even a Winnie the Pooh ride in Disney Shanghai, but you definitely can't post anything that might insinuate any similarities between the President Xi Jinping and Winnie the Pooh, which
He does kind of look like Winnie the Pooh. Holy crap.
I don't know why you would. Anyways, personally, I don't notice any similarity at all. Long live Xi Jinping, ruler of the Chinese Communist Party. The boys get more and more annoyed by all of this censoring, and the producer shares an important piece of knowledge that we should all learn to live by.
You gotta lower your ideals of freedom if you want to suck on the warm teat of China.
Meanwhile, Randy has arrived in China, and while going through customs, they discover an insane amount of weed in a suitcase. And Randy is such a massive idiot that he doesn't understand why that's a bad thing.
Oh, here we go. Jai Dama Integrity Weed.
He ends up in a Chinese labor camp, educational training center, where he meets some of the others being held there.
Who's that?
Nobody, just a bear.
This makes him realize that he might be in a bit over his head. He's held in front of the Chinese court where he's expected to beg for his freedom, but instead he shares an empowering stance on how wrong they are in their treatment of their people, how they're restricting the freedoms of their citizens, and how he knows exactly what they need.
You could use some integrity, China.
Marijuana.
Now, it just so happens...
The boys are still working on the filming of their biopic when they get a word of a few new things they can't mention, including the time Jimmy questioned if he was gay and anything to do with organ transplants. Okay, the homosexuality thing is kind of obvious, but why would China censor anything to do with organ transplants? It couldn't possibly be because of the many reports of the harvesting and trafficking of organs from religious and ethnic minorities that are totally not being genocided. My glorious president would never do something like that. Long live Xi Jinping, ruler of the Chinese Communist Party. Back with Randy, he and all the other Disney characters.
Yo, it's Mickey Mouse. Everybody hates Mickey Mouse. Everybody loves Mickey Mouse.
Are getting scolded by the big boss for potentially damaging their relationship with China. He finds out.
Let's see. There's Elsa. There's Thor. There's What's Her Face. There's Iron Dude. There's there's Buzz Lightyear. Don't remember this guy's name. Wow, that's a lot of Disney characters. And they're all ruined because of Disney.
Out that Randy is the cause of all this, and we get a meta joke that I definitely appreciated.
What South Park? Do I own that? No, not yet, sir.
Randy decides to challenge him on his ethics, claiming that he's lost.
Oh, please, Disney, do not buy South Park. You'll ruin it with your ruiningness.
All of his values in this pursuit of expanding his business.
Is this supposed to be Conan O'Brien? Is this Conan O'Brien?
But luckily for him, he can help with that.
But there's one thing you don't have, and that's integrity.
Now, it just so happens.
Randy and Mickey then receive the honor of speaking with Xi Jinping to plead their case, but it doesn't go over too well because he's still mad about the whole Winnie the Pooh thing. Upon hearing this, Randy knows exactly what he has to do, and he formulates a new plan to get back in their good graces. The boys continue to shoot their biopic, and now they have 2 members of the CCP live in studio to remind them of what they can and can't talk about. Stan learns that he can't mention anything about it being a free country, and that he has to rewrite the entire second act to comply with the Chinese censors. He's very annoyed by this, but continues to write anyway, giving us a scene that is a very literal representation of what's going on in nearly every Hollywood writer's room.
这是什么？你给中国人丢脸啊！
Now I know how all the writers in Hollywood feel.
Later,
That's a good one. I like that part.
he sits with the band and discusses how hard it is writing with the Chinese censoring everything, and makes a point about how crazy the whole situation is.
We live in a time where the only movies that us American kids go see are ones that are approved by China. Yeah, it's like China is the new MPAA.
He comes to the conclusion that the only band China would approve of is something super vanilla and cheesy, since their death metal band was far too edgy. He then realizes that the band they're looking for has been right under their noses this whole time.
Bang! Bang, bang! Finger bang, bang! Bang, bang, bang!
We get the long anticipated
What the heck is Justin Bieber?
reunion of Finger Bang, the boy band they formed way back in season 4. It had been nearly 20 years since their tragic falling out back in 2000, and man is it great to see them again. Even though the Chinese censors are loving it, Stan interrupts their performance because he knows he can't do it. He doesn't want to sell his soul for China's sake. He can see what
It's Justin Bieber. Jewish Justin Bieber. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of Justin Biebers.
pandering to China is doing to the industry, and he's not willing to participate in it, even if it means missing out on the Chinese market.
But it's not worth living in a world where China controls my country's art. And anybody who would betray their ideals just to make money in China isn't worth a lick of spit.
It's a firm stance on creative integrity and the importance of standing up for what you believe in, a lesson that someone else in the Marsh family clearly missed out on. Pooh and Piglet have been appropriately re-educated and are free to walk the streets of China, but they're clearly out of place as all of the people are too scared to even associate with them. They just so happen to stumble across a pot of honey, and Pooh ends up walking
Sorry, Winnie the Pooh, you're dead.
directly into a literal honeypot as Randy sneaks up behind him and gruesomely strangles him to death in front of Piglet, as his final attempt to get back in the good graces of the CCP. It becomes clear that he succeeded in his mission as we then get a look at Tegrity Farms' new advertising campaign.
Because after a hard day of forced labor, we're getting beat for criticizing the government. All hail the Communist Party, and all hail Tegrity Weed.
Back at the farm, we get to see just how effective this new advertising campaign has been, as a dump truck full of money drops off the
Dang, look at all that money. I love money. Well, I don't really love money, but I like money. I opened up a Patreon, by the way, so if you want to support me, you could become a Patreon member. So, just saying, you don't have to, but it would be nice.
the company's earnings, and Stan goes off to write a new song about his father. And that was banned in China. In my opinion, it's one of the best episodes in all of modern South Park. There were a ton of funny moments and biting commentary. It's the classic recipe that makes for a great South Park episode. And you know what? I am absolutely certain that all the parties referenced in this episode reflected on their actions and took accountability, changing their ways and becoming— who am I kidding? I don't know why I'm doing this bit again. We all know how this goes by now. So now I think we all have a better understanding of why China wasn't a big fan of this episode. Not only does it openly discuss many topics that are already banned in China, but it's also an intentional attack on China's policies and the companies that support them. Following the release of this episode, anything related to South Park would be completely banned from the Chinese internet. Without a VPN,
South Park appears to
VPN, it was now impossible for Chinese citizens to watch or talk about South Park in any way. Now, I will mention that South Park had never actually aired in China prior to this. Like I talked about, all the media that airs in China has to be vetted by the CCP, and the excessive amounts of swearing and violence in South Park was enough to prevent it from ever even having a chance in China in the first place, even without all the times they made fun of them. But it wasn't banned per se. You could still access clips and re-uploads of the episodes through the Chinese internet if you looked for it. I've even seen a few Chinese DVD boxes that contain the first 5 seasons. I assume these are bootlegs, but regardless, South Park definitely existed in China prior to this. In my research, I read quite a few Reddit posts of Chinese
Help, where can I watch South Park in China? It was banned in China for like a year now, and I miss it so much.
fans struggling to find somewhere to watch the show after the ban. Even though they're using a VPN to get on Reddit in the first place, they obviously couldn't sign up for any streaming services to watch the show, not to mention the difficulty of finding any copies that are subtitled or dubbed in Mandarin. Searching for the show on the Chinese internet would get you about as far as searching for information about the place where absolutely nothing of interest happened at all. So the show is completely banned in China, but you're probably wondering, how did Matt and Trey react to this news? Well, before we talk about that, let's talk about some of the very bizarre events that would immediately follow. So what exactly happened to the companies that they went after? Disney and the NBA were the two that they targeted the most, so how did they respond? Well, they didn't. I mean, it would have been shocking if they actually did respond to it, but some pretty funny things did happen shortly after the episode. As you may remember, around this time the NBA had gotten into some hot water with China. They had been investing in the Chinese market for
China. The NBA.
Years before this, and basketball was incredibly popular in China. At the time, China made up for at least 10% of their total revenue, and it was expected to be much more in the following years. On October 4th of 2019, the general manager for the Rockets, Daryl Morey, made a tweet in support of Hong Kong, where large-scale protests against the Chinese government were currently taking place. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about the politics of Hong Kong and China, but in my research, I did learn that Hong Kong has its own system of government distinct from China's, and China was basically trying to establish more of a presence in their government. That's super oversimplified, but that's pretty much what was going on. It just so happened that the NBA was hosting preseason games in China at the time, and after this tweet, shit hit the fan. China refused to broadcast these preseason games at
We are strongly I'm not gonna read that.
As well as refusing to broadcast any Rockets games for the foreseeable future. All 11 Chinese sponsors of the NBA would also drop the company shortly after. Tons of people within the NBA would immediately throw Morey under the bus, condemning his stance. This even included his own players, with James Harden apologizing on his behalf.
Yeah, we apologize. We love China. We love, playing there. I know for both of us individually, we go there, once or twice a year. They show us the most support and love. So, we appreciate them as a fan base, and we love everything, they're about, and we appreciate their support that they give us individually and as an organization. So
I'm sure the locker room wasn't awkward at all after that. The NBA would then release their official response, where they would shove him even deeper under the bus, claiming that his views don't represent the views of the Rockets or the NBA, and that they have great respect for Chinese culture. When this statement did not go over well, they
What the heck? Did this guy land from a spaceship or something? He's like an alien.
released another one backtracking a bit and claiming that they couldn't regulate what their employees would say, and that there are, quote, consequences of freedom of speech, and they will have to live with the consequences. They also claimed that their motivation—
Look at him, he looks like a freaking alien. Looks like something Candace Owens would talk about.
is far more than just growing their business. Which again, I totally believe, because as we all know, massive corporations are often motivated by stuff other than money. Now, I had always assumed that this situation had happened before the episode was released, and it was one of the reasons that they targeted the NBA so heavily. But no, Morey sent this tweet 2 days after this episode was released. So funnily enough, this whole situation just further emphasized South Park's point about the lack of backbone these companies have. And this would play into the response that Matt and Trey would make shortly after. Speaking of the Hong Kong protests, they would know better than anyone just how adamant the CCP is about censoring anyone that disagrees with them, considering that's exactly what was being done to them. This seems to be part of the reason that a few days after the release of this episode, anonymous protesters would set up a projector in the middle of the street, playing it as a form of protest, where large groups of protesters would gather to watch the episode. The protesters clearly appreciated the sentiment being shared by the show, and in the following days, the episode would be praised in countless online—
Wow, look at that. South Park saving a generation of Chinese people.
Forums used by the protesters to organize and communicate. Another strange consequence of this episode would fall on the EDM producer Zed, of all people, who would go on Twitter to claim that he had been banned from China for life just for liking a South Park tweet. Most people assumed this was a joke at first, but CNBC would reach out to his publicist, who would confirm that he was in fact banned. And supposedly it wasn't even a tweet about the China episode, it was a post celebrating their 300th episode. I couldn't find any other information about this, so I have no clue how he found out he was banned or whether this ban is still in place, but I don't think he's performed there since, and it's safe to assume that the Chinese Zed fans shouldn't be anticipating a performance at EDC Yangcheng Lake. Now when it comes to Disney, South Park has gone after them several times, including within the last year, so this is nothing new to them. But surprisingly enough, they would include a reference to South Park in 2022's Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, and of course, of all the characters they could have gave the cameo to, they picked Randy. So yeah, Disney clearly does not care about South Park, but I don't think anyone expected them to. So now that we've gone through all the weird circumstances that directly followed this situation, we can finally talk about how Matt and Trey responded to being banned in China. A few days after all of this went down, in a move that would come as a shock to everyone following the situation, Matt and Trey would apologize to China. I mean, how could they do this? They had taken such a firm stance on the importance of having a backbone and standing up for what you believe in. So for them, of all people, to cave to China and apologize was completely out of character and hypocritical. I'm gonna go ahead and read the apology, but be warned, this may change your view on Matt and Trey forever, and South Park might not ever
Why? Why did they do that?
feel quite the same. Official apology to China from Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Xi doesn't look just like Winnie the Pooh at all. Tune into our 300th episode this Wednesday at 10. Long live the great Communist Party of China. May this autumn's sorghum harvest be bountiful. We good now, China? Oh, yeah, actually that's totally in character. Never mind. So where do we go from here? Well, for Randy, in the next episode, he learns what it means to have some real integrity after Tao-Li insists that he stop working with the Chinese government.
I hate the Tao.
Fuck the Chinese government, there!
Although, I get the feeling that this is more of a direct statement from Matt and Trey, as if they hadn't made it clear enough already. But you may be wondering if this South Park ban is still in place. All of this went down 5 years ago after all. Has anything changed since then? Well, I wanted to see for myself, so I went to the Chinese version of Google and typed in South Park. I was honestly surprised when the first couple of results were actually about South Park. Upon further investigation, I realized that they were pretty much just Wikipedia pages. One of them was about the South Park video game, The Fractured But Whole, and weirdly enough, the other one seemed to be about Craig Tucker, for some reason. Other than that, I couldn't find anything about the show.
Oh, this guy has powers? I didn't know
No,
that.
so it seems like the ban is still in place, and for some reason these two random Wikipedia articles just happen to slip through. So if you're in China, I guess the only things you're allowed to know about South Park are The Fractured But Whole and Craig. So have fun with that, I guess. But what did we learn today? I think the lesson that we should all take away from this situation is the importance of avoiding censorship. You see,
that was the end of the video. So if you want me to watch, hold on, let me go all the way back to... That was the end of the video. Until we meet again, my fellow...
South Park would be banned in China, as they completely wiped any trace of South Park from all of the Chinese internet. It was essentially as if the show never existed. Literally overnight, any content related to South Park, whether that be forums, fan websites, clips, or even full episodes, completely vanished. So if you were...
Till we meet again, my fellow strugglers.